So in this chapter, we're going to be talking about the nature and uses of sociology. So some of the objectives we'll be discussing. We're going to define what is sociology. We're going to take a look at two important concepts. One is called the sociological imagination. The other one is called the sociological perspective. We'll discuss what's known as popular wisdoms. We'll take a look at different types of social sciences. We will discuss the differences between applied science versus pure science, and also we'll take a look at the appropriate way of reading tables and charts. Sociology is a social science. It is the study of society, social groups, social institutions, and also social life. So anything that affects our lives as human beings. Sociology, since it studies society and group interaction and various types of institutions, educational institutions, political institutions, religious institutions, anything that touches our lives as human beings, sociology studies it as a discipline. So whether we're talking about poverty or pandemics, wars, gender roles, sexuality, family dynamics, anything under the sun that touches our lives, sociology does study. So before we kind of move on through the course, there's two main concepts we need to talk about that are going to kind of lay down a foundation. The sociological imagination, this states that our experiences that we have as human beings shape our perception of the way that we see the world through our lens. And everybody has different experiences through life. Even everybody who's taken this course has different experiences from each other. And so what this means is that your experiences have shaped you as an individual. They've shaped the way that you look at society, how you interpret society, even how you interact with society. And that's going to be a different way than somebody in the same class or in the same, who lives in the same community or same family, or somebody halfway across the world, the way that they view the world based on their experiences. And the reason that this is so important is to understand that since we all have different experiences, we all perceive things differently. And it doesn't necessarily mean that one perception is better than the other. It's just that it's different. And so if you take a look at this two photographs here, it's obvious to see that the lives of these four children are going to be very different from each other. You look like you have some children over there that looks like they come from an affluent family. They're doing well. They probably don't have any issues of poverty or going hungry or struggling. The other children, it looks like they are growing up in poverty and they may have experienced a lot of hardships in their lives. So based on those experiences, there's a really good chance that they look at the world differently. They probably even perceive that the world looks at them differently and interacts with them differently. So this is referred to as a sociological imagination. And the reason this is important is that we need to understand that the way that we interpret the world may not be the way other people interpret the world in society. So that leads us to what's known as the sociological perspective. And what this does, this calls us to be objective whenever we are looking at different nationalities, different cultures, different lifestyles, even things that may appear to be unusual or odd to us from our perspective, is to try to keep an open mind, to try to be unbiased, to try to be open, to try to ask questions, to use critical thought, to kind of understand their perspective. Now, this doesn't mean that we accept everything as being okay, that everything is subjective, that everything is relative. No, it basically just calls us to question the obvious, to look at the world through a critical, open-minded, and objective lens. And what this does, this allows us to be open enough to understand something that's different. If we're looking through a very narrow lens and we're not allowing ourselves to ask questions or understand, then we're looking at it from a narrow-minded perspective, which is going to make it very difficult to analyze and understand society. So if we're really going to be studying society as like sociology as a discipline does, we have to be open to ask questions and use critical thought and being objective. Sociology also takes a look at what are known as popular wisdoms. Popular wisdoms are statements that a lot of people believe to be true. They may have read it on the internet. It may be passed down from one generation to the next. It may be something that has been talked about for many, many years. And so it just kind of becomes this popular wisdom that people just tend to believe. So sociologists will often challenge these, and they will really kind of take a look and say, you know what, a lot of people believe this to be true, but I want to find out, is it actually true? Let's run the numbers. Let's do a study and let's find out if it's actually true. So one example would be, most seniors live in nursing homes. There's a lot of people that believe this to be true, but it's actually only a very small percentage of seniors 65 and older that live in nursing homes. Most of them live in their own homes. Divorce rates are the highest they've ever been. Most people believe this to be true. It's not true. Divorce rates have been plummeting and going down for the last several decades. The main reason is because marriage rates have also been going down for decades. Divorce rates in American history was probably at one of its highest right after World War II. So after World War II, a lot of young men came home, they got married, so the marriage rates really started to skyrocket. And anytime we see an escalation of marriage rates, we're also going to see an escalation of divorce rates. So that was probably one of the highest in American history right after World War II. The third one says the highest number living in poverty are ethnic minority groups. This is not true. The highest number living in poverty are going to be whites. So they're going to have the highest number, not only living in poverty, but also qualifying for different types of social services and programs, Medicaid, WIC, food stamps, and other types of social programs. One that's not listed here is there was a popular wisdom going on a couple decades ago that stated that if you got pulled over by a police officer and you've been drinking, and if you have a copper penny in your mouth as you do the breathalyzer, that it would help you pass the breathalyzer. A lot of people believe that at the time, but that does not work. So sociologists will often challenge these popular wisdoms. If we're taking a look at studying society, we're going to kind of break it down into two major categories: small groups and also large groups, because it's important to study small group dynamics and also things that occur on a national scale or an international scale. So microsociology is going to be looking at group dynamics and studying society of very small groups. It could be family dynamics, could be the dynamics between couples, the dynamics between parents and their children, and also it takes a look at the individual. So, we just discussed the sociological imagination, how our experiences shape our perception of the world. It shapes our perception, our feelings, and the way that we interact. All of this is going to be on the micro-sociological perspective. The macro sociology is going to be large. It's going to take a look at very large group dynamics. So it may study national divorce rates, the issues of global pandemics nationally and also around the world, homelessness on a national scale, and various types of global conflicts. But it's also important to understand that the micro and the macro, they do affect each other. I mean, we could take a look at national crime rates on the macro level, but we could also analyze how crime rates affect the victims individually on the micro level. If somebody's been a victim of a crime, we can analyze how it has affected their own personal lives. If we take a look at global pandemics, so COVID-19, obviously it had ramifications nationally, internationally, around the world, but it also had a major impact on our own personal lives. Whenever we were wearing masks and people were getting vaccinated and they closed the schools down, it affected us on a very individual, small level and on a family level. So when it comes to things studied in society, a lot of times the things that we study have both a national or a macro effect, but they also have a micro and small effect as well. Let's take a look at some different types of social sciences. Sociology is a social science. It studies society, but there are other social sciences that we study as well. And all of these things have one thing in common because they interact with humans. Economics, this has to do with the manufacturing, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So here in the United States, our economic system is known as capitalism. It is a for-profit system where individuals will own the majority of the industries, and it's a for-profit type of economic system. Other types of economic systems would be socialism and also communism. The next one is called political science. This deals with power and government. So this deals with how a society chooses to be governed, how the laws are put in place, how the people are put in positions of power are actually placed. So here in the United States, our political system is known as a democracy. We vote representatives in, we vote representatives out. In other parts of the world, they may have a totalitarian government where they have a dictator, where somebody has come to power through force. In other parts of the world, they may have a monarchy where they have kings and queens, and people come into power through their genetic bloodline. The next social science deals with anthropology, and this is going to be the study of various cultures around the world. So it does sound similar to sociology. Sociology studies various aspects of society, but anthropology will actually study various cultures and everything about that particular culture. Throughout this course, we're going to talk about a famous anthropologist named Margaret Mead. And she lived among 3 different tribes to understanding gender roles. And this is not uncommon among anthropologists to actually live among a group of people that they are studying to learn everything about them, their laws, their traditions, their folklore, their food, their housing, their education, their medical care, everything about that. So that is referred to as anthropology. Psychology is the study of the mind and what's happening with the mind. It'll take a look at things like positive reinforcement, how if we have certain types of behavior and it's rewarded, it could have a positive effect in repeating that. It takes a look at how punishment is used to deviate certain types of behavior. Psychology will also analyze various types of mental disorders that people may struggle with, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, even schizophrenia. The next social science is history, which is the study of past events. The reason that history is important is because if we understand what has happened in the past, it'll give us a better idea of how we got here in the present time by the changes that actually happened in the past, really kind of reflect on where we are today. So in regards to here in the United States, if we take a look at the abolitionist movement, the women's movement, the civil rights movement, all of these various movements and the successes of them, it kind of gives us an idea of where we are right now at present day because of what actually transpired in the past. The next social science is referred to as geography. So geography is going to be studying various land formations around the world, not just studying the land formation, but also the people who inhabit that area, the resources they have, the type of housing they have, the food that they can get possession of. And so if you take a look at different parts of the world, some places there's the rainforest, there's the desert, there's the tundra. Some people live very close to the coast where they have access to water, and that affects the kind of food that they have there. Some people live in very cold climates, and so their resources are going to be different. Their clothes are going to be different. Their housing are going to be different. So geography kind of takes all of those things into consideration as well. So those are some various social sciences. Let's talk now about the difference between pure science and applied science. Pure science is research with a discipline. Its main objective is to advance a discipline to the next level, to develop hypotheses, to gather data, to test those hypotheses, to develop sound theories, to advance a discipline like sociology or orthopedics or nursing or business or therapy or whatever it is, its main objective in philosophy is to take a discipline to the next level through research and also through publication. Applied science. Applied science and pure science, they do interact with each other. Applied science is whenever people who are in professional positions, they pull the pure science from the academic journals and from online, they read it, they internalize it, and they actually use it or apply it within their professions. So let's say that you have a nursing journal, and there's some new advancements in regards to hospice care, pain management, those types of things. If a nurse reads that academic journal or that particular piece of research, and she or he starts to apply that within their own profession of being a nurse, that's going to be the crossover of pure science within applied science. It's whenever research is being used within an occupation. Next, we have the steps to reading a table. The reason that this is so important is that we need to understand how to read charts and tables and line graphs, because they're put in place to give us some understanding, to convey some sort of meaning and give us some sort of information. So let's take a look at the ways to actually read tables and charts. First off, we will examine the title, which is typically at the top. With this chart here, it says this is the percentage of household income for each fifth of the U.S. population. When it comes to these numbers and these statistics, it's usually going to be where the source is. So you're going to, number 2 is check the source. The source is usually at the bottom. If a table or chart doesn't have a source where it can actually verify and tell you where it got the numbers and the statistics and the information, you should be very careful about reading that information. If they can't tell you where the source of that information is, it's probably not credible information. So always look for a source. A lot of times these days, the source may be actually set in a hyperlink where you can click the link and it'll take you directly to where that information actually came from. Number 3, you need to check for any possible footnotes or headnotes. Not every chart or table or graph is going to have footnotes or headnotes. But if they do, it's going to give you a little bit more information. So the headnotes will be at the top, the footnotes will be at the bottom. And as you can see here, here's a headnote. It says there may be some variance due to non-taxable cash income. What that means is that these statistical information, these percentages here, they came from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it was probably tracked through the IRS. So what it means is that even though these numbers may be close, they're probably not perfect, because there's a lot of people who get paid straight cash under the table that they do not claim that on their state or federal taxes. So it kind of wanted to let you know that these numbers are not exactly perfect. The footnote is going to be at the bottom. It says that these percentages are based on annual averages of income. Number 4, you're going to read the columns and the rows. So on the left side, it shows you the total population. It breaks it down into 20%, all the way from the highest 20% all the way to the bottom 20%. It takes a look at all the income that was generated in the year 1980 versus 1990. Number 5, you draw comparisons between those 2 years, and you typically look for something that stands out, and you draw some conclusions. So as you're looking at this, one thing should stand out. The highest fifth of the top 20% of American families, they're the only category where the overall percentage of income actually went up. It went up from 47% up to 55%. What that means is they took a larger percentage of the pie of income that was generated from one year to the next. If you make a comparison of 1980 to 1990, the bottom 80% of American families, they brought in a smaller overall percentage of what they brought in 1980. Now, this doesn't mean that in 1990, 80% of American families made less money. They made more money, But percentage-wise, the top 20% of American families made a whole lot more money, a lot more money. And so the question would be, well, why did that happen? What's going on here? Why is there such a disparity between the rich and the poor? Why is the gap between the rich and the poor widening and actually not narrowing? Because the fact is, we have more millionaires today than we've ever had before. We have more billionaires today than we've ever had before. And we're right on the next level where we're actually going to start to have trillionaires on the planet. So what happened was between 1980 and 1990, this was a big time period where a lot of American companies started to go overseas and they started to buy their products, or have it manufactured in other countries. China, Japan, India, Mexico. And they discovered that they could buy a finished good and have it shipped in containers to the United States a lot cheaper than actually manufacturing it here in the United States. So we saw a lot of American companies, Walmart, Levi, a lot of American companies start to go overseas, set up manufacturing, or either employ people over there or buy from other companies in other countries to buy their products and move it here to the United States. So that's one of the reasons why they were able to really increase their overall income, is because they reduced their overhead so significantly that they were able to buy a finished product and have it shipped over and increase their profit margins so significantly. So that's what's really important. When you're looking at tables and charts and line graphs, you not only want to see where the differences are, but what you want to try to figure out, well, why did that happen? What happened in society to make those kinds of changes?